Hey, Delonica, say hello to all the other campuses. Come on, say hello. Yes. They're eating, so they're eating right now. Well, listen, good afternoon, and it's a privilege to be here, and it's a great day. Thank you all for showing up, and I know we have lots of folks online across the Power of Five on all of our campuses. And it's really an honor to welcome you to this Constitution Day program, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank, first and foremost, our teammates and our colleagues in the Faculty Senate for really the inspiration behind this, and then Student Engagement and Success for coming along and putting this together, and then our Student Government Association. And you all have a treat. We've got some really amazing, literally experts who know this stuff and practice it every day. So I think you're going to enjoy this. Today's a day when we pause to reflect on one of the most powerful documents ever written, and on the freedoms and responsibilities that continue to shape who we are as Americans, as citizens, and as members of the University of North Georgia family. Now, more than ever, wouldn't you say that this discussion is timely? If we haven't met before, my name is Mike, and I get to be the president of the University of North Georgia. And if you're a guest, welcome. If you're a guest online, welcome. And we hope that your time with us today brings you great value and inspires you. The Constitution is not just parchment and ink. It's a living promise of liberty, democracy, and self-governance. It is endured through moments of division, through moments of challenge, and even through moments of violence. And yet it remains the framework that allows us to gather today, freely, openly, and respectfully. The great human experiment, the ability to exchange ideas, to agree, to disagree, to learn from one another, and to strengthen this thing we call democracy. Here at North Georgia, our mission is not only to prepare students for careers, but to prepare leaders of character. Leaders who understand that freedom requires responsibility, that rights come with rules and duties, and that our voices carry weight when they are used with courage, respect, and wisdom. This work has always been essential, and in today's environment, where free expression and campus safety are often in the spotlight, we are reminded of its continued relevance. Our university has an incredibly unique and important role in our state and in our nation. We are the Military College of Georgia, codified in Georgia state law. We are the Army Senior Military College, codified in federal law, Title 10 of the United States Code. Through these designations, we have the distinct honor of serving as the home of America's core. We have been doing this work for over 152 years. Our cadets graduate, are commissioned, and take an oath to support and defend this thing we call the Constitution of the United States. When we talk about building a university that doesn't exist yet, this is part of what we mean. We are not simply preparing students for jobs. Students, this isn't for you to just get a job. We are preparing you to engage in the hard work of democracy, to serve your communities, and to lead with integrity in the face of incredible complexity. Every one of our brand pillars, leadership of character, higher purpose learning, unmatched value and access, momentum and opportunity, community and service, finds its roots in the freedoms that we are here to celebrate today. And just as the Constitution was designed to evolve with the times, so too must our university. We are committed to students first always. That means ensuring that every student, regardless of background, belief, faith, or perspective, feels welcomed into the conversation. They feel like they're supported in their learning, and they feel like they are prepared to take their place as a leader in our society. Today's program is robust, and it will cover important in sometimes challenging topics. Academic freedom, expressive activity on campus, the First Amendment, and the balance between open inquiry and respectful dialogue. These are not just abstract ideas, as we have all come to find over the last few days. They are lived experiences here on our campuses and across our communities and our society. They shape how we teach, how we learn, and how we engage with one another, even when we disagree. So as you listen, here's my challenge to you. Ask hard questions and join in the discussion. I encourage you to learn and lean into the spirit of the Constitution itself. Remember the early days where people gathered in hot, unair-conditioned rooms and debated and argued. Bold, purposeful, and unfinished. That is what our Constitution is. Bold enough to stand for principles, purposeful enough to guide generations, and unfinished enough that each new generation must add their voice and their vision. North Georgia is proud to be a part of this work. Together we are preparing leaders who are not just ready for their careers, but ready for their communities, their country, and the world. Thank you all for being here. I am grateful that you would take time to do this. And thank you for being a part of the living tradition of freedom, responsibility, and purpose that is our U.S. Constitution. So with that, I am incredibly pleased to welcome to you the real MC of the event. I am the MC for the MC, Olivia Holm, who serves as our Director of Elections for our Student Government Association here in Dahlonega. Would you give a round of applause to Olivia?
Well, hi, I'm Olivia. I'll introduce myself first. I am the Director of Elections for Student Government. I'm a senior on the Dahlonega campus, and I'm a political science major with a concentration in pre-law. I'll introduce the panelists here. On the far end here is Dr. Cavalli. He first joined UNG in 1993 when it was then known as the North Georgia College. Today he is a professor of political science and a faculty advisor to the Political Science Student Association. He has produced several publications, including a book on the presidency and several chapters in an American government textbook to which he edited. To the other side of the table is Dr. Jameson Brewer. He is an associate professor in the College of Education with an expertise in education policy. His work has been cited in Supreme Court cases, the U.S. House of Representatives, and numerous state legislators on a variety of education policies and issues. Directly to my left is Miguel Rodriguez. He serves as the Assistant General Counsel at the University of North Georgia, providing legal guidance across a broad spectrum of university operations and issues impacting higher education. Directly to my right is Glenn Harris Jr. He is the Senior Dean of Students, supervising the functions of all Dean of Student offices across UNG, including Student Care and Outreach and the Office of Student Integrity. As an advocate and support for students experiencing complex or hardship circumstances, he also serves as the campus dean of students for both Dahlonega and Blue Ridge. In between Glenn and Dr. Cavalli is Dr. Rochelle Kelholtz. She serves as the assistant dean of students of the Office of Student Integrity. She has an extensive background in working with students during all phases of their educational journey. Over the last 5 years, she has expanded her experience in matters surrounding student conduct, case management, sexual misconduct, and crisis intervention. From going forward, each of our panelists will have a topic that they will be talking about. And first up is, I believe, Dr. Cavalli.
Okay, thank you very much. Gives me time to set my timer here. First, a quick note before I start to my students. Hopefully you've checked in officially. That'll record your name, but I also have sign-up sheets here for attendance so that you can get extra credit. And the rest of you, bug your professors for extra credit for this also. I also want to apologize to everybody because I'm going to be leaving at 1 o'clock because I do have a class to go to. So, the First Amendment. Before we get to the First Amendment, what we really need to do is take a quick step back and think about why the Bill of Rights, and also think about why the Constitution, for that matter. And so we go very quickly back to the Declaration of Independence. We declared independence. We're free of this heavy-handed British government. Now what do? We need our own government. We react, which is normal. We thought the British government was very heavy-handed, very domineering, did not allow participation, was very strong, central, distant government, and that's the last thing we wanted. So when we created our own government, we created the Articles of Confederation, which was exactly the opposite, okay? Think of it as a pendulum swinging, okay? We went from, we in a sense suffered under the heavy-handed British government. We declare independence. We want another government that's exactly the opposite, okay? So the Articles of Confederation are a reaction to the heavy-handed British government. We go as far in the opposite direction as possible, a very limited government, very small, very limited government that almost has very little power to do just about anything. We go too far, okay? Again, this pendulum, if the British government was too oppressive, the Articles of Confederation is way too chaotic, all right? Alexander Hamilton talked about national humiliation in the Federalist Papers. And so we get together and we start to think, oh, maybe we got to change this thing, okay? The chaos of the Articles of Confederation convinced the framers that they needed a stronger central government. But there were still a lot of people who feared too much central power. And many of them organized opposition to this new Constitution. They didn't like it, all right? They said, where are the rights of individuals? Now, some of the Federalists, some of the framers argued we don't need that. And in fact, including a Bill of Rights would actually be seen as a limitation of our rights. But those that were known as the Anti-Federalists, those that opposed this, were very persistent, and they mobilized opposition. No Constitution without a Bill of Rights. And so what happens is the Federalists strategize. They say, okay, what we will do is we will take charge of this. Right? We will take charge of the Bill of Rights so that they can control its writing. And among those rights at the very beginning is the First Amendment. And among those things, among other things, religion, press, assembly, petitioning the government is freedom of speech. And in fact, three of those things together, actually 3 or 4 of those things together, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, freedom to petition the government for a redress of grievances, and freedom of speech, can all be looked at together in terms of limiting the government's ability to punish us for our speech. Right? And so I wanted to simply run down a few of the decisions that have been built up in support of the First Amendment over the years. I'm sure I'm going to be corrected by those on the panel that know better than I do, but I wanted to just sort of wind up by talking about a few of these things, or at least mentioning them. So, for example, we have the case of Brandenburg versus Ohio, the cases of Brandenburg versus Ohio and Texas versus Johnson. All right. The Brandenburg decision says the First Amendment protects your ability to advocate conduct that is actually illegal. You cannot take action to incite illegal conduct, but you can advocate it. All right. Texas versus Johnson protected flag burning. Nobody liked the outcome. Nobody liked the actual incident. None of the Supreme Court members that ruled on this liked the actual incident, but they all said it's protected, or the majority said that it is protected speech. Right? Students, which I believe we'll talk about in just a bit as well. The case of West Virginia versus Barnett. Student speech cannot be compelled. Students cannot be compelled, for example, to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Right? And Tinker versus Des Moines, students have speech rights as long as you are not disruptive. Okay? You can't jump up in the middle of my class and say Star Wars sucks. Okay? But your speech in general cannot be punished as long as it's not disruptive. In elections, the case of Buckley versus Vallejo, individuals, you and I, have the right to spend as much money as we want in support of candidates for office. We cannot be limited, right, in that. Individuals cannot be limited in how much we can spend independently. You can't give it to the candidates, but you spend it on your own, you can do as much as you want. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission gave that same right to corporations and unions. Right. The internet. In Reno versus ACLU, the Communications Decency Act was ruled to be unconstitutional. We have the same protections on the internet as we have for speech and for physical media. Depictions of violence, Brown versus EMA. Violent depictions in video games are not legally obscene and thus are protected under the First Amendment. Freedom of the press, New York Times versus Sullivan. The press is protected from defamation suits without evidence of deliberate malice. Now, I'll just wrap up at the very end to say that all of this does not mean that speech is unlimited. There are limits. The classic limit is you cannot falsely yell fire in a crowded movie house. We've all heard that one. But also dangerous speech, speech that does incite illegal acts, can be punished. Obscene speech can be punished. And commercial speech can be regulated. Companies can be made to prove that their claims are true. So with that, I will turn this over to everybody else. Thank you.
All right, greetings everyone. So I'm Miguel Rodriguez and I'm the Assistant General Counsel here at the University of North Georgia. From the Office of General Counsel, I'm one of the attorneys here for the university, and I will be presenting on the First Amendment governance, SCOTUS, USG, and UNG. So specifically, how the specific Supreme Court cases can be found right on the pages of USG and UNG policy, as well as the obligations UNG has to you, the students, and your rights to free speech. So right away, make sure I'm doing this right. Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate it. Glenn had taught me how to do this. Never worked one of these before. So right away, like, how does the First Amendment apply to UNG, right? So UNG is a public institution created and managed by the University System of Georgia. Right out of the Georgia Constitution, it created and authorized the Board of Regents of the University System of Georgia to create and manage its public colleges and universities. And University of North Georgia is one of the state universities of Georgia. There's 26 public institutions, and because UNG is a public institution created and managed by the state of Georgia, UNG is obligated to protect your rights, your student rights to free speech. And so it's actually the students of the university community who have the full they have the full authority and the full protections of the First Amendment, whereas us staff and faculty do not have that. So moving along, what are UNG's obligations as a government entity? So since we are a public institution, we owe you, the students, we have obligations to you. And so you, with those obligations, let's say so what obligations did the judicial rulings from SCOTUS put on UNG? I've got 3 case examples, and please, by all means, this is not all inclusive. We've got about 8 minutes, and this could be an entire semester, but these are just 3 cases that I wanted to be able to pull out and talk to you guys about. So the first one here, the Healy v. James case. So UNG is obligated to allow student groups to get recognition without viewpoint bias. Okay, so in this case, there was a group of like-minded students who wanted to be able to organize and start a registered student organization. They had gone through all the process, all the right procedures, and the university had actually stopped them and denied their right to be able to organize. And they specifically did this, they solely did this because they felt that this organization would cause disruption to the university because they were affiliated with a national organization, and they just did not want them to be able to have access to the public resources which they deserve, which was their right. So here, you know, the university is having to balance free speech you know, with public safety. And so you've got a mix now with Rock Against Racism and Healy, to where Rock Against Racism, 1989, we're talking New York City. It was Central Park, and some rock bands wanted to have a benefit concert in Central Park, and government had said, sure, you know, you can have you know, your benefit concert. However, you have to use our system, you have to use our technicians, and we are going to manage how loud that sound is going to be. And the rock band felt that their freedom of speech, that their First Amendment, their constitutional rights were violated, and the Supreme Court actually said that it was not. That it was reasonable to try and manage how loud the sound was and so forth, because this public park belonged to everyone. It belonged to every single person, and not just the people who wanted to go to the rock bands, to the rock music. So here, the substantial government interest on preventing the disruptions in the public park. So they were balancing the safety of the operations in the park and being able to make sure that everyone was able to use it, with the management of the people's free speech and their protections. Now, this third one I put on here just because it was kind of popular when I was asking around on what to do. So another obligation that UNG has is UNG is obligated to allocate mandatory student fees with non-biased viewpoint. And this is Wisconsin v. Southworth. Here, there was a group of students who had claimed that their freedom of speech, their First Amendment right, was being violated because their mandatory student fees was used for events and for speakers that they didn't really agree with, and ideas that they thought that, you know, that didn't align with theirs. And here, the Supreme Court had said, hey, as long as those fees are allocated with a non-biased viewpoint, then that's right? So there's a point here I wanted to put out and not miss, but let's see, you can't deny a specific, so the mandatory student fees seems to be the allocation of the student fees with a non-biased viewpoint. You'll see that time and time again through Healy versus James and through Southworth. And so I'm going to move on. So how does the case law shape USG policies? So we talked about just 3 cases, but those 3 cases you'll find time and time again in USG policy and in UNG policy. So here right away, I've actually pulled this one out because of the last sentence. You'll see USG Policy Manual 6.5. USG and all of its institutions shall, okay, that word shall, vigorously protect those freedoms, shall vigorously protect freedom of speech and both academic freedom. Now, this the legal context of shall, okay, that denotes a mandatory obligation. It's not permissive. The system is saying here to its institutions like UNG, Georgia Tech, UGA, it's not saying that, you know what, if you feel like it, you know, go ahead and protect the student's freedom of speech, you know, if that's what you want to do. No, it actually says you have to. You are obligated to be able to protect the student's freedoms. And so these next two are going to be pulled right from the cases that we just talked about. It's USG Policy Manual 6.5.2. Institutions may set time, place, and manner rules, but not content-based restrictions. So part of that is from the Rock Against Racism case, this time, place, and manner, which you'll also see in the UNG policies as I go along. And this last one, USG encourages freedom of expression while maintaining safety and neutrality for all university communities. So that balance there of being able to operate to protect the university, but while also protecting the First Amendment rights of you, the students. Okay, so how does this case law shape UNG policies and its own community? So right here, Section 1A, in fulfilling its mission as an institution of higher learning, it encourages the free exchange of ideas. The free exchange of ideas actually comes from Healy, where they had said that the university is the marketplace of ideas. The university campus is like an open marketplace of ideas where students, not government, decide which ideas are worth keeping. And so this next one, Section 1B, to facilitate the First Amendment freedoms and respect with the constitutional rights of the university community, and to ensure such activities do not interfere with the university's mission and its operations. So that balance that you had seen in Healy and in Rock. So finally, we've got Section 3H2. University personnel may not impose restrictions on individuals or organizations expressed in an expressive activity due to the content viewpoint of their expression. So it's not to impose those restrictions based on the content. So finally, bottom line is that nothing here is random. The case law that we have in our policies and our procedures from the University System of Georgia to the University of North Georgia, it's not something that we just came up and had a meeting one day and said, here's what we're going to do. It actually came from specific cases and which we had to follow, and down to the state level, to the university system, and then all on to us. So the case precedent shapes it, USG incorporates it, and then UNG, we implement it here at the institution. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Give me a second here. I'm not going to read this to you. You could read this yourself, but this question about academic freedom usually is discussed in the context of faculty members, but it does include students. A couple things there about this notion of academic freedom. This notion is, generally speaking, questions about what can professors teach, what can students write about in their assignments, those sorts of things. The essential point here is that those conversations, those assignments, have to be germane to the subject content of that particular class. But I'm thinking about this in terms of, most of you in here appear to be students. Your work, your writing, it has to be germane to the subject, but it is important to make sure that the things that you're writing about are specific to the assignment in question. Talk about that in just a second. Specifically here to this question is kind of framed for faculty members, but because most of you appear to be students, I want to talk about this from the perspective of a student. What happens if your faculty member is teaching something, requiring you to read something, requiring you to consider something that you just don't personally like? A couple things to think about this. If you take your personal views, politics, religion, all those things that you might hold dear, those are important. Anytime you hear something that doesn't immediately align with that, there are a couple different ways we can react to that. I think if the first reaction is, I don't like this, I shouldn't have to hear this, I think that you could use that as a point of entry to interrogate why it might be that you don't want to hear this. What perhaps could you learn about this other perspective? I think generally what you want to avoid is the expectation that your own personal views are constantly being reinforced, not just at the university, but outside of the university, right? I think that unfortunately, lots of us seek out echo chambers. We seek out affirmation of folk confirmation bias of the things that we already agree with, we hold dear. But the point of an educational institution, if you look at the mission statement of any university, generally speaking, it has some notion about the institution being educative in its approach and its mission. The things that get discussed in the classroom must be educational in nature, must provide an educative opportunity for students. Which is why sometimes this question is usually answered as well, I want to hear both sides, right? We need to hear both sides of this argument, which is already problematic to suggest that there are only ever two sides to a particular viewpoint or particular question, but it opens up the door for conversations of being miseducative, okay? So for example, say that you're taking a geology class or an astronomy class or a physics class, whatever it might be, and you have a student in that class who is part of a growing group of people all around the globe that believe that the earth is flat. This notion that your faculty member teaching about a round earth should not be interpreted as necessarily as an attack on your personal views that the earth is flat, right? It should create the opportunity, it should welcome you to question your views, to challenge your views, to have a conversation with the faculty member, conversation with the students in the class about this topic, about the data that is presented, right? So again, thinking about this as a both sidesism can be problematic because it is not up to the faculty member, let's say in a geology class, to say to the class, if you're talking about the shape of the earth, to say, well, we have all of this data that shows that the earth is round, but there are some people who think it's flat. This could go either way. Pick the one that you like the best, right? And as I understand, most journalism students are taught usually in the first week of any class that they take. If you have one person who says it's raining outside, and you have another person who says it's not raining outside, your job as a journalist is not to say, some people say it's raining outside, some people say it's not raining outside. I don't want to appear biased. So, dear reader, choose for yourself what makes you feel good, what aligns and reinforces your own preconceived notions. The job of a journalism student or a journalist is to go outside and see if it's raining and report on whether or not it's raining, right? So if it happens to be that it doesn't confirm biases or perspectives that we already have that we bring into our classroom spaces, instead of pushing back against that, I invite you to use it as a point of entry for deeper conversations, right? It's possible that you have seen some type of political cartoon where there is a number on the ground and two people are pointing at it. It is the number 6, right, or the number 9, depending on which way you're looking at it. You have two competing views, one saying this is a 9 and the other one is a 6. Raise your hand if you've seen something like that. Okay, most of you. Here's the thing. Sometimes in some context, it's perfectly okay to say we can agree to disagree. Perfectly fine, right? Like if Miguel says that coffee is so much better than tea and I say tea is so much better than coffee, we can say we can agree to disagree. But sometimes if we're talking about research and data and for something to be educative in nature, it might be important to pull back, to get a broader view of the context. It's possible that that number written on the ground is the number for a runway, right? So if Miguel and I are pilots and co-pilots in a plane, and we are told to land on runway 9 left, we cannot have this discussion about whether or not he thinks that is 6, that is 9, and then we can agree to disagree because lives are on the line, right? There is a correct answer. It's perfectly fine for one of the other parties to have misinterpreted it, but misinterpretation is an opportunity for growth and for learning. Okay. Thinking about the legal defensibility, I think that Miguel answered lots of this. Generally speaking, or fully speaking, conversations, textbooks in classrooms, assignments, and anything that is related to the classroom space, if it is germane to the subject and within faculty member's expertise. That faculty member is protected from or within the notion of academic freedom, but again, so are students. Students do not have expertise in their field, right? That is why you are here, to learn from folks who are experts in their field. But within the scope of that class, what is germane to the content, what is germane to the assignment in question, you have the freedom to express those views. Perhaps we talk about this later, but let's get to this. I think that it's important for faculty members to provide opportunities for students to express competing views, right? So almost discredit everything I said a minute ago about this notion of letting go of some pre-held notions, preconceptions, and learn, right? Be able to grow through that. So for me, every single assignment that I have that students must do, there's a section on their assignment that invites them, well, it actually requires them to provide a critique of the argument. But here's the important thing. This critique of the argument is not a space for the student to go, nuh-uh, I don't like that because. The point is that you are welcome to push back. You have to use data. You have to use evidence to push back against these ideas, because in the academy, we move closer and closer to the peak of knowledge through competition, through debate, through dialogue, through discourse, through exercising competing views. That's perfectly fine, but that critique has to be grounded in the content, and it has to go beyond the, I don't like this, this is wrong, because I think it's raining outside, and I've always thought it's raining outside, therefore no one can ever say that it's not. There you go. Thanks. Oh, sorry.
All right. Well, thank y'all again for coming. I want to give a special shout out to all of those on the other campuses, the Gainesville, Oconee, Cumming, Blue Ridge. Thank y'all so much for coming. We're so excited to have y'all. Again, my name is Glenn Harris, and I serve as our Senior Dean of Students. And before I got started, I just want to kind of share a couple resources with you to kind of help make all of the connections. So if you wherever campus you're at, you should have or available to you a pocket-sized Constitution. So if you desire one of those, there are some staff members who are available on your campus to be able to give you one of these, as well as a flyer. And this is a flyer that says, if you hear speech that is offensive, there's no need to get defensive. And this is talking about, when we're on a college campus, we're going to engage and people are going to say things that we find offensive or that we don't agree with. There's a young gentleman here in the back named Tyler. And yesterday we had this event. Yeah, I see you, Tyler. Or maybe it was Monday. We had this event. And I came up to him and I was like, Jordan or LeBron? And he was like, dude, obviously, what did you say? Was it? He said LeBron, right? And so I was like, I gave it to him why Jordan was better. But then I was like, dude, whatever you said, I would have disagreed with you for. He was like, man, really? And it was really just like a fun way of saying, like, sometimes people are going to say things on campus that you find offensive or that you disagree with. But what do you do in those moments? And so we wanted to be able to give you a little bit of tips, of some strategies, of some ways to navigate that. And so whether it's staying cool, whether it's walking away, speaking up, finding ways to get involved. I see the PSSA Club is here. Shout out to you guys for coming. So we wanted to provide that and let you know that we can disagree without being disagreeable, right? We've learned a whole lot here about our Constitution and the foundations and how all of that shows up. And so with that being said, I want to talk specifically about UNG's policy when it comes to freedom of expression on campus. This QR code will take you there to our freedom of expression policy. So if you would like to take a photo or to scan that QR code, we'll definitely encourage you to do that. But the premise of why we have a freedom of expression policy, Miguel kind of talked a little bit about it earlier. We're a state institution and we have rights and we have responsibility to help ensure that the freedom and free speech rights of students are protected. And so why do we have this policy? Our mission is, as a higher education institution, is to encourage the free exchange of ideas. We believe that is critical, that is invaluable to what we to fulfilling our mission, and we want to be able to facilitate those First Amendment freedoms. And there are times in which we have to kind of make a little bit of arrangements and pivots to ensure safety and logistical operations of the university. So this policy will really exist to make sure that those necessary logistical arrangements don't interfere with the operations of the university, but also that it protects the individual rights of others. And so some of those examples might be, we might need to arrange march routes, or we might need to address security needs. We might need to avoid multiple events that are happening at the same time at the same location. So again, that's part of kind of the framework for this policy. And so we're going to talk about the who, what, when, where, why of this policy. And then we'll be able to open up the floor for some questions.
Thanks, Glenn. So again, I'm Rochelle Kyle Holtz, Assistant Dean of Students, and I oversee our Office of Student Integrity as part of the Dean of Students team. So who does this policy really impact, right? Well, it impacts a lot of people. First of all, it impacts the university community. That includes faculty, staff, and students, as well as any guests that they have that they invite to campus. And those UNG community members do not need to reserve traditional or designated public forums, and we'll talk a little bit more about what's the difference between a traditional and designated public forum for gatherings less than 10 people. So if the pro wearing glasses club wants to go and stand outside of this building, and there's just a few of them, and say, hey, we think people who wear glasses are excellent people. They are just superior. They have the right to do that, right? So those are kind of the guidelines for UNG community members. Now, if you are not a UNG community member or not a guest directly associated with one of our UNG community members, things are a little bit different, right? Everyone who is not a faculty, staff, or student or guest, I talked about that already, they actually have to use our designated public forums, and we'll talk about, again, what those are and where those are located. And we have a reservation system. It's really, really easy to use, and we ask that those non-community members reserve those spaces at least 48 hours in advance. They are located on all of our campuses, so it's not central to just one campus. It's really easy to navigate, and they are also limited to 4 scheduled activity per campus per month. So again, really easy to use, just a few guidelines that we ask these non-community members to engage in.
Yeah, it's important to realize that with these non-community members, that we are not limiting their content based off of, or we're not limiting their ability to come on campus based off of their messaging. We remain content neutral in all of this. Again, it's to ensure that we have the right measures in place, safety, and all those kinds of things. So just a quick, I'm clicking it on my laptop, but not there. Thank you. Just a quick location for everyone about where your designated public forum space is, depending upon your campus. So in Cumming, it is on the grass area near the south patio. The south patio adjacent to the Nighthawk statue. And in Gainesville, it is the grassy area that stretches from the Student Center to the Strickland building. In Oconee, the grass area between the quad walkway and the library wing of the Student Resource Center is designated there. And in Blue Ridge, it is the glass area in front of the sidewalk or the plaza area in front of the building. And then finally, in Dahlonega, it is on the west side of the promenade nearest the drill field. However, if we already have a university event that is scheduled to be there, the patio between Price Memorial Hall and Hansford Hall will serve as our designated public forum space for those non-community members.
Okay, so talking a little bit about the different types of forums, and I mentioned that a minute ago. So the difference is we have kind of 4 different types of forums: the traditional public forum, the designated public forum, the limited public forum, and the non-public forum. So let's go over kind of what each of those entails. So the traditional public forum, and I apologize, it was going to be too wordy to put it on a slide. The traditional public forum are the ones that are on each campus, available to community members and their guests for spontaneous expressive activity. And, as long as it provides to those time, manner, place restrictions, which we will get to, and involves less than 10 people. If it does involve more than 10 people, we will ask that activity be moved to one of our designated public forums, because those areas are set up for, those bigger groups of people. In addition, okay, so limited public forum. So a limited public forum, so registered student organizations, faculty and staff wishing to engage in expression activity in those limited public forums that utilize a reservation process should follow the reservation process to use the space. This is always done on a first come, first served basis, but in the event that multiple requests conflict, the use of space will be reserved in the manner consistent with reservation priorities, essentially. Okay. Then we have non-public forums. So non-public forums, there's the limited. So non-public forums, and I pulled it up on my phone as well, is really just areas where we ask that they're not traditional, and we ask that those types of things don't need to necessarily happen in those areas. So those includes things that are limited to residence halls, faculty and staff offices, administration buildings, student health center, the library, Pine Valley in Dahlonega, Memorial Hall, and all of those other types of places. Those areas are actually restricted and intended for the purpose that is not usually meant for expressive activity, okay? And then we have, so I talked about traditional, limited, and designated. Did I hit on all of them? I think I did. Anyway, they're all available, and you can see all of the definitions online. And then we also ask, I do believe there was one more that talked about certain forums that you can, I'm not sure which one it falls into, but certain forums that you can, that are used for specific spaces. Like if you are here in Dahlonega, our memorial area over where the flagpole is, right next to the drill field, right, that can't be used as a designated public forum. And we ask that that's used specifically for those types of things that are meant to go along with a memorial area. So, you know, that's what those spaces are essentially reserved for. In addition, I believe our drill field is one of those as well, but there are several others, and I would invite you to go and look at our policy.
All right, so when we're talking about types of speech, what constitutes protected speech and unprotected speech, any kind of expressive activity is protected. Any kind of spontaneous activity is protected. When we say spontaneous, we mean, you know, something happened, you know, in the news within the past 72 hours, and I want to get together and respond to those kinds of things. So it's not something that you've planned out for a month or two in advance. You know, it is protected, the thoughts, the ideas, the opinions on a variety of different topics. Again, we remain content neutral when it comes to those things. And protected speech that we might not like includes indecent speech or hate speech. So that's a really important piece to note, is that hate speech is protected speech, which is really, really, it makes people uncomfortable to know that sometimes people can say things that are super hurtful or offensive or hateful, and it's still protected, and we still have to allow it. There are a few limitations to the kinds of speech that is not protected, and Dr. Cavalli mentioned some of these a little bit earlier today. But anything that incites a limited lawless action triggers an automatic violent response. We call those fighting words. True threats or obscenities, child pornography, defamation, and then certain types of commercial speech. Those things are not protected speech, and there is a really high threshold to meet some of these. And oftentimes that is based off of determinations based off of the police, right? So if someone says, you know, they made a threat to me, and I have to, like, they have to have an in-depth review and to determine was it a true threat or was it not. Time, place, manner restrictions. So this piece has been mentioned in a few different aspects of the time today, but we really create time, place, and manner restrictions for our university to ensure the operations of our university can continue to happen. Again, we have to fulfill our mission as an institution, and so you can exercise your freedom of speech, but there are a few time, place, and manner restrictions, and so I'm just going to highlight a couple of those things for you. So anything that attracts a crowd that is larger than the occupant limitations that are allowed, that can safely contain it, right? So if we are in this room and this room can hold 100 people and 300 people are coming, that might not be the right venue to be able to hold this freedom of expression area, and so we might move to the designated public forum space because of that. Anything that disrupts university activities or obstructs entrances or exits or stairwells to buildings, anything that obstructs traffic obviously cannot be permitted. representing the threat to the public safety of our campus. Tent setup, encampments, those things are not allowed. Anything that is being affixed to a permanent structure, a fence, a building, anything along those lines. Lighting things, like having an actual fire of some kind is not permitted as well. Utilizing amplification unless you've gotten special permission and it's through a university-sponsored event. And then that solicitation and commercial enterprises. All of these things are located in the policy. So if you're like, what are those things? You can double check there.
Okay, so a little bit about student conduct and just potential outcomes. And I really want to first reinforce that before anything else, when it comes to expressive activity, we want to encourage opportunities for education, opportunities to inform people about this policy, and it's not an automatic, if you do this, then this is going to happen, you may get in trouble, all of those things. We do like to really engage with students about why we have this policy, the importance of this policy, but then, we do have to consider these things as well. So really, if there was a concern that maybe a time, place, and manner event, occurred and it violated that time, place, and manner restrictions, we, from the Office of Student Integrity perspective, we would not be asking you to come and speak with us because we are punishing you for what you said. We are asking for you to come and speak with us because maybe you used an amplification device that was not approved, right? Or maybe you had pop-up tents that, clearly go against our time, place, and manner restrictions. So it's not that you would be called into the Office of Student Integrity for, oh, well, I said this, or this is the event that I had. It's because for some reason, maybe you weren't in the correct space. Maybe, it went beyond the scope of what we could do and proper security measures weren't taken, right? Those are the types of things that we're talking about, especially when it comes to the distraction and when it disrupts the university campus, right? If we're disrupting classes, if we are disrupting, people's opportunity to go to class or come from class, enter into buildings, that's when those conversations would take place. Again, I just really want to reaffirm the fact that we would not be looking at this as a, hey, it's because you said this. It's, hey, you are allowed to say X, Y, and Z. However, we have these policy guidelines that we really need you to follow, and you're talking to me because you didn't follow those guidelines. So that's when the Office of Student Integrity may get involved.
And I want to say this, in the role of a dean of students, there are oftentimes situations where we encounter a student who submits a form and says, hey, this person said something that I found really, really hurtful or offensive or that really bothered me. And I want you all to be really mindful that while there are protections, there's also the natural consequences of your decisions as well, right? So if you post something on social media, you have the right to post that, right? And employers also have the right not to hire you because of that, right? Or that they have the right to do whatever. And so just know that sometimes your freedoms, they're there for you, but there could also be just the natural consequences of those decisions. And so just being very thoughtful about that.
All right, so a couple weeks ago, I sent out a survey through the Dean of Students for students to submit pre-submitted questions for us to answer. I went through and I selected about 6 of them for panelists to answer. And before we get started, I want to thank the PSSA for helping me go through them and getting that survey out, as well as Dr. Stephanie Roundtree, who helped put together this starting in the spring semester. So the first question is, how does the school plan to handle political interference that may impact a student's constitutional right to free speech? I believe you're answering.
All right. Yeah, so everyone always gives attorneys a hard time because we always start an answer off with, it depends, right? But it does. It depends on the facts of the case. Each case is independent of themselves. And so here the response of the university is going to depend on where exactly the interference is coming from. So is that political interference coming from a non-community member, or is that interference coming from a university community member? If it's a university community member, is the political interference coming from a student or a faculty or staff member? But ultimately, no matter where the interference is coming from, we're going to first and foremost, we're following the law and we're following our policies, which Glenn had so graciously showed us and had a link up there for us. And but if the political interference is unlawful, you know, just like I said, and it's in the in USG policy, the University of North Georgia is going to vigorously protect your First Amendment rights.
All right. The next question is, what are the limits on free speech on campus when it comes into conflict with creating a safe space and an inclusive environment for students? Other questions kind of had the same variety of when does speech become hate speech and why can't we get in trouble for saying stuff? And that'll be answered by our Dean of Students.
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate, hate speech is protected speech, and so that's something that we have to be mindful of. I do think that there's always opportunities for education, and so sometimes those conversations that Rochelle was mentioning, because sometimes people may not always realize the impact of their words. You know, if I stepped on someone's shoe and I just moved on throughout my day, their foot might be hurting, their sneakers might be scuffed, and they have no idea the impact that they've left. And so sometimes helping students just to be able to understand, like, man, like that, have you thought about this from a different perspective of how that might have been hurtful, how that might have been offensive? Not that you can't say it, right? But is that the lens that you want people to view you through, and allowing them to be able to kind of make some informed decisions through that? You were going to add something?
I would also ask that, you know, it says that part of the question says, you know, creating a safe and inclusive environment for students. Another way that we do that is providing resources, right? So in addition, yes, Glenn has already kind of talked about, you know, hate speech is protected speech. Sometimes it's very difficult for us to hear things that are hurtful. However, we do have resources on campus that can help you kind of manage those hurtful feelings, right? So that's another way that we create those safe and inclusive environments. We may not be able to stop somebody from saying something that hurts, but we can help you on the back end deal with it. We can help you create a new organization that combats that speech that you may not like, or we can refer you to, you know, counseling services. We have a lot of really great individuals here on campus who specialize in these types of things, and you can get engaged and, you know, in connected with those people, again, to reinforce that safe and inclusive environment.
All right, going to question 3, which I will help answer. How will we be able to advocate for ourselves if peers or faculty take issue with our views? So one way you can do it is coming to student government meetings. They're different on each campus, but everyone is always more than welcome to come. If they have an issue with what's going on with campus, we can always plug you into different offices for different faculty offices that can help you address those issues, especially the Dean of Students. Yeah, Miguel, you have anything to add?
Yes, piggybacking on Dean Harris, on Glenn again, just because someone finds offense to you know, your issue, or they may not agree with what you're saying, doesn't necessarily mean that they have violated your First Amendment rights. Dr. Cavalli, I believe, is who brought up Texas v. Johnson, or he had left. And in that case, they said that it's the bedrock principle of the First Amendment to not allow the government to restrict your expressive idea just because someone else takes offense to it. But like, however, if that speech does extend beyond protected speech, if it becomes unprotected speech, like they had already said, like, we have resources available for you all as students to be able to reach out to. If you feel that you're being harassed or discriminated upon, we have online, there's an online form to fill out for harassment and discrimination, and we also have an anonymous ethics hotline, which you can reach out to. So we're making sure that you have the resources available if it does extend to that unprotected speech. But like they had, you know, everybody here has hit on, you know, hates. There's not an exception to hate speech. There's not an exception to speech that's offended, and that's kind of what we are here for. I think as that's like the environment of the university, is to be able to listen to somebody else's views and to debate about it, to talk about it, to seek that truth and wisdom for which this institution is founded on.
Yes, and going back to student government, every campus should have somewhat an SGA representative who can tell you when our meetings are. Also on the Gainesville campus, there is a speech and debate club, and the PSSA on the Dahlonega campus, every Wednesday they have a crossroads event where they invite people to come in and debate certain topics. And then going to question 4, how does campus leadership plan to respond to any student protests?
We would let the protest happen. We want to support students' ability to express whatever opinion that they have. If there becomes a safety risk involved, depending upon where they are, if they are assembled somewhere and it's gotten beyond 10 people and we might need to move them to the designated public forum space because of safety concerns, we may ask them to shift down, but we're not going to shut down the speech. We will also allow counter protests, right? But there's things that we have to be mindful of as far as disruption to the university community and our mission and being able to fulfill all those kinds of things. So the long story short is we'll follow our expressive activity policy and allow students to be able to protest and to utilize their voices to assemble, whether it be through a student group or through anything else.
All right. We have 2 more questions left. What are the options for redress for students who are treated unfairly or are penalized for using the First Amendment in ways that may be contrary to current political pressure on the school?
So I think as we've all kind of talked about here, if you feel like you are being treated unfairly for voicing your opinion, I know Dr. Brewer did an excellent job about kind of reviewing, if when you're in the classroom and you may be discussing something, as long as it falls within the scope of that content and those classroom disruptions, of course, the ideas and expressions that everyone had, are protected and should be shared, right? But if you do feel like you're being unduly punished for something like that, we would again encourage you to reach out. There are a lot of support resources. Dean Harris is an excellent resource as well. The Dean of Students Office on every campus is an excellent resource. We've also talked about, Miguel hit on the ethics hotline and things like that, because we, again, as an institution of higher education, fully support the free expression of ideas, of course, in the classroom, as long as it meets those guidelines that Dr. Brewer discussed. And so we want students to feel that they are in a space where they can exercise those things freely. So again, even if, the current political climate or may go against what a professor may be teaching, or differences are going to happen, right? We're going to see them happen, but we do encourage that for all students to be able to freely express themselves, be able to say what they want to say, as long as we have those left and right parameters, and encourage and enforce resources if we feel like something is happening where we're being discriminated against or there's some kind of bias happening.
Yeah. One of the processes that the Dean of Students Office manages is student complaints or student grievances. And you can find information about that on our website, or you can just fill out a flight support form or say something form, and that gets routed to us. We can help connect with that student and help them navigate that.
All right, and the last question, which kind of goes into the question we just answered, a lot of people seemed really concerned about professors grading assignments when students and the professor are expressing different political beliefs and how that may be reflected in difference in grades.
Yeah, so I think again, I approach this as an educator. Typically will invite students to the opportunity to consider, to express other viewpoints, right? Like considering a viewpoint, taking up a viewpoint is not necessarily endorsing that viewpoint for yourself. In fact, one of the best techniques, if you're ever going to debate somebody on a particular topic, is to be well versed on the other side of that argument. So I think from an educational standpoint, it makes sense to be asked sometimes to take up a viewpoint that you yourself might not agree with. That's perfectly fine. If it happens to, well, let me say this, for a particular assignment, and so this notion about particular grades that a faculty member might give you, you first have to make sure that your response to this assignment is in alignment with the assignment instructions. If I say to class, let's do this hypothetical, I say, if I hit a piece of glass with a feather, the glass will break. I think most of us recognize that, that's not true, that doesn't actually happen. But if I say for the purposes of this assignment, this is an assumption that we're going to make, I want you to write about what would happen if you hit a piece of glass with a feather. The answer, of course, in this context is that it would break. It's perfectly fine to explore that concept right within the parameters of that class. But if you are adhering to the assignment instructions, to the assignment rubric, if the faculty has a rubric for that particular assignment, and you feel that the faculty member has kind of gone off the rails in terms of their response to you, the particular grade that you might have gotten on that, there is a process for grade appeal. The first step is a conversation with that faculty member. That's the first step. The second step is usually a conversation with the department head. After that, the conversations with the dean, and then after that, you can go to the grade appeals process and all of that. It's important to enter into conversation with your professors, right? Like the first stop should not be an email to the president. It should not be an email to a state senator. It should not be a post on TikTok. Are you free to do all those things? Absolutely, right? But you might have noticed recently that this rush to do all these other things outside of having a conversation with a faculty member causes trouble, causes problems that are usually outside of the context of what is being discussed, and it takes on a life of its own. Have a conversation with that faculty member. If the faculty member is not responding to you in this notion that you feel that somehow you've been graded in an unfair way based on political beliefs or whatever it might be, that's your first step. If that is not successful, the next step is the department head and so on and so forth. But again, I encourage you as students to not be put off by this notion that you're being asked to read things or listen to things or take up perspectives from other people that you might not otherwise do, because that is the reason you're here. You are here to expand your horizons, to hear other thoughts, to understand the world in different ways and understand different perspectives. Part of our educational nature and mission here is to provide you with those opportunities.
All right, and then those are all the pre-submitted questions that I have. I will invite President Shannon back up to close us out and break us out into our in-person info sessions.
All right, we give this great panel a round of applause. Rock stars, every one of them. Olivia, thank you so much for your leadership. It takes bravery to sit up here and do this and organize this. And I hope all of our students across our campuses just recognize the hard work that went into this. I want to thank our faculty senate. Dr. Roundtree is phenomenal. Those of you who are in Oconee, I know you know her well. She did a fantastic job of helping us figure out how to do this. The biggest challenge today was time, and I think we did a great job of that. Also incredibly grateful to the Student Government Association across all of our campuses, all of our leaders. So Olivia, make sure that your teammates know how awesome they are and how well they did. And then I also want to thank Student Engagement and Success for all the work that they continue to do to help us navigate the complexity. And that's how I want to kind of tee up the next part. What we're going to do is be able to have each campus have a conversation on your campuses. And there's folks in Oconee, in Blue Ridge, in Gainesville, and in Cumming, as well as here in Dahlonega, to have some local conversations with the folks that are there. And look, we are in an incredibly complicated moment, not only in the history of the nation, but in the history of the world. And if you look at what's going on across the globe and all of the things that are going on today, and you know, the chancellor mentioned this yesterday at the Board of Regents meeting, and I want to echo it. You know, Albert Einstein, one of the greatest minds of our time, talked about early on, and I'm trying to live up to being a scholar here, Dr. Brewer, but he talked about how technology is really going to challenge humanity. And his context at the time was obviously the dawn of the Second World War, where physics was, which led to the atomic bomb, which became our modern nuclear weapons. And he really started to talk about it. And I think that's our greatest challenge today is we take all of the complexity we're operating in as people, and all of us show up with values that vary. And that's the beauty of the American experiment, is that we can show up, agree, disagree, and then continue to live together. You know, and it's this Constitution that provides us the rule of law, as Miguel talked about. And then the way we operate in that is we debate, we have elections, we continue to challenge, but we do it in a way that is giving the other person the benefit of the doubt. And so today, as we think about that in the age of technology, the speed upon which we operate, and for the students that are still listening, you are growing up, and I hate to do that to you because, you know, I act like an old timer. You're growing up, but you're growing up in an area of great complexity. You know, when I was in college, you don't want to know what our computers look like. They were green screens and this printer that used to go and there was no internet, there were no phones, there wasn't any of that complexity. But now today, the speed upon which we are navigating our world is just so incredibly complex. And so as you go into your discussions, I challenge you to think about, you know, we talk about what comes next here. What comes next? You know, what comes next in our conversations? What comes next? Because students, you are the ones 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years from now that are going to be growing up and developing as a professional in this environment. You know, many of us are further along in that journey. And so I want to challenge you as you go into this and you think about it, you know, what are those things for you? And look, no two people can agree on anything. LeBron, Jordan, I have a definitive opinion. You know, Georgia Tech. You know, we could go on and on. We could talk about sports. We could talk about movies. We could talk about music. We could talk about religion. We could talk about politics. We could talk on and on again. But what we have to do is get our arms around it's okay that we don't see it the same way. And that we can still have a cup of coffee together, shake each other's hand, you know, maybe even hug each other, and continue to build this great country that we get to be a part of. So I challenge you as you go into your individual group settings and talk about locally the topics, to think about it in that context. And as Dr. Brewer said, and I think he gave great advice, when things come up that challenge you, we have so many people that come to work every day here to serve and help be a part of these conversations. Go talk to people. Go talk to your professor. Go talk to someone in your program. If it's not your professor and you're in a certain academic program, somebody in that program, somebody that you could talk to. Go talk to your advisor. Go talk to the dean's team across all of our campuses. Go talk to anyone in student engagement. You know, go talk to somebody and start to have the conversation, and we'll look for ways. Look, I'm always open to talk, but Dr. Brewer's right. If you come to me first and it's a complaint, that's not fair to everyone else who hasn't had a chance to interact with you and talk about it. And let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's give folks the benefit of the doubt that they're just trying to do the right thing. I think if we make that assumption, we can build some trust around that. So I challenge you today as we go into these breakouts for the next few minutes and this dialogue continues. Let it not stop here. You know, the provost, I see the provost in the back of the room. She and I were just talking yesterday. We're going to continue this interaction, and I hope our scholars here will come back and be a part of it and continue this. This is healthy. This is the right thing to do. And ladies and gentlemen, this is American. And that's what we can stand tall and proud of today. So thank you so much to the panel. Would you give them a round of applause again? Thank you to SGA, the Faculty Senate, Student Engagement and Success, all of our teams. And please now go into your campus discussions, and I hope great things come from them. Take care. Thank you so much. Go Nighthawks.